What would you say is like the biggest skill that you think a wedding photographer needs?
Show up on time, know what's going to happen, and be in the right place at the right time.
Hi everybody, my name is Nick Gerber and I am the host of G&S Wedding Chats, a podcast about weddings made by industry professionals. Today, we're going to be welcoming the founder of G&S, a mentor to me, and also my dad, Kurt Gerber. Before we do that, though, this is the first episode, so I wanted to talk a little bit about why we have this podcast in the first place. First and foremost, we've been photographers for many years. Probably collectively, we've got about 60 years under our belt in terms of photographing weddings. And so within that, we've seen a lot of things, and we wanted to share our experience with that in an easy to listen to format. So podcast was a natural for that. Also, as a geriatric millennial, I think that there was a natural calling for me to want to be a podcast host at some point. But really, it's about capturing this right now, this moment, as best we can, because everything is fleeting and we don't know what tomorrow brings. And so it's important to capture as much as we can in the short time that we're here. So all that to say, welcome to G&S Wedding Chats. We're going to have a chat with Kurt Gerber soon. But first, did you know that G&S does more than just weddings? We actually do all manner of photography. One of the things that people have been coming and seeing us about recently has been headshots. As we transition out of COVID, people are looking for something that's updated. Perhaps they have hired some new people during coronavirus, and it's nice to just get a unified backdrop with everybody's picture that sort of looks the same and reads as part of a team. So come and see us if you've got an organization and you need to update your headshots, or really any other kind of photography for that matter, and we'd be glad to give you a quote. GerberScarpelliCorporate.com. The whole idea of this podcast is kind of a twofold thing for me. First thing is to provide our clients with a resource so that they can make more informed decisions. Maybe we can help them through some things just by thinking through our experience out loud. The other thing is like, we are a family business, which means that the history of the business is a really important part of our story, and I would love to just start documenting it. I mean, if nobody else listens to it, I'd be totally satisfied just to have a good document of like the history of our thing in case my sons ever get interested in it. So
I mean, I agree. I talked about it to some other friends that aren't in the wedding industry, and they think it'd be fascinating to have the story of our company and the story of our family business documented on, YouTube or in the other formats.
And hopefully this makes it onto some other things. But one of the things that part of the paradigm shift that I've had since I started doing this is that we are documentarians. And I mean, we made a documentary movie together, so that underlines that fact. But like, the whole idea is like grabbing on to as much of the now, the history, something that will soon be history as we can, so that it lives there, so we have access to it for the future.
I mean, having an archive is important. I have a physical archive of negatives that from projects that I've shot over the years. That is not an organized archive, but it is an archive. It is a historical line. You can see there's a beginning, and then there's the first piece of film that I shot, and then there's the latest piece of film that I shot, which is now over 8 or 9 years ago, but there's a through line through all of it, which is kind of cool.
Before the formation of Gerber and Scarpelli as a company, you were out there doing a lot of commercial work, right?
Yes. Commercial work was what I really felt was my calling. I started out doing a lot of tabletop, then moved into people and editorial, and then advertising work. Most of it was business to business or consumery on a low level, maybe some packaging. Not too many national ads, but that's okay. I did quite a few local ads and stuff. It was very fulfilling. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Well, I remember working with you on the WGN bus ad campaign, and I remember sort of some of those formative moments of us being able to like understanding what you were trying to craft as you were trying to like put those people into a position and then light them and then give them, each of them got their own hero shot so that they could be used in collateral later on. And I think that looking back on that now, it's like how much of that I wonder is seeped into like the way that I look at what we do, you know? But
I mean, hopefully a lot. I mean, it's just, I guess, if from nothing but the standpoint of solving visual problems. I mean, you have to light it. You have a subject. You have to light the subject. You have to record the subject. You have to decide what angle you want to shoot the subject at, whether it's a human or whether it's a thing. You know what I mean? It all involves a thing and then a two-dimensional representation of that thing, which you get to create, which is the fun part.
So you were doing all this commercial work, local commercial work, some national. How did you and Mike meet up? What was that? What was the first time you met Mike Scarpelli like?
I found Mike Scarpelli's number on a board back in the day in the camera stores. There used to be a message board or an assistance board, so you would go see what assistants were available to work. I mean, and they would all have I believe there was a picture of him, an explanation. He had a truck, he had, blah, blah, blah skills and experience. So I called him and we jammed it out on one project, and we haven't, we've been together ever since then, which is probably 25 and a half years, maybe 25 and a half years, maybe 28 years. So that was cool. That was fun. We just hit it off. We have both had good senses of humor. We jived at the time. And obviously, at the time, he was a soldier, and I was a general. And then we decided that we both liked being lieutenants best, so we could both kind of juggle the responsibilities.
How was it that you guys, what was the realization, or if there was one, to deciding that you were going to move away from commercial stuff to working on weddings?
Well, it wasn't a conscious decision, really. It was Mike was doing some wedding work on the side, and that interested me because I had the weekends available. I would say my career as a commercial photographer was burgeoning, which means it was hot and cold. It was I'd have a great month and I'd have a shit month, and I was really looking for something that would help even that money stream out, so that there was always money coming in, there was always projects to be shot. And Mike had the skill. He started shooting for a wedding company that was shooting 35 millimeter weddings, which was new at the time, and we decided that we liked the model of this company. It was called Smith Photography. We liked their model, which was photographers would get 10 rolls of film to record a wedding. They would shoot the 10 rolls, like 5 rolls of black and white and 5 rolls of color, or maybe 6 and 6, whatever it was, and that would be what you would use. That would be what you would do to record the wedding, and then you would shoot. You would get your proofs back. You would get the 4x6 inch proofs back, and I did a couple of freelance jobs for this company, Smith Photography, and they helped me learn about framing and timing and things like that were new to me as a wedding photographer. And so I really started to develop that skill in a journalistic kind of way. I mean, you're kind of stalking your subject in the photojournalistic world.
What would you say is like the biggest skill that you think a wedding photographer needs? Like you were learning some things from them, but is there like one? Is it a mentality? Is it a way that you approach it? Is it what is it that makes a good wedding photographer, do you think?
There's really 3 things. Show up on time, know what's going to happen, and be in the right place at the right time when the things are unfolding. So in other words, whether it's show up on time, you're there, you meet the client cannot get mad at you because you're late, because you're not late, you're early. So you establish a good relationship, you show up, you find your angles on your subject, which is whether it's the groom or whether it's the bride, sometimes both, sometimes you're bouncing back and forth. You find your angles that are available in that situation, and you start to in your mind you press record, and you just kind of going to record every moment that seems significant from the time you arrive to the time you leave, whatever your contract is. One of my biggest assets is my willingness to just go with the flow.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Also, I mean, you got to have a pretty good relationship with your equipment. You have to know how to adjust your equipment in a split second so that you can capture whatever's going to happen. And hopefully after a couple of weddings, you can kind of predict what's going to happen so you can be there with your camera set at the right setting to capture what you need to capture.
Mm. What has changed in your mind from when you were doing it with Mike back in the day, banging it out with 35 mil to now? What's changed? What's been the same?
Honestly, the 35 millimeter film cameras and 35 millimeter digital cameras, the platform's the same. It's you're looking through an instrument, you're seeing the subject, you're pulling the trigger, lighting, all the technical stuff. There's a direct relationship from film to digital in that regard. So I didn't have to learn a whole new craft when it became digital. I just had to adapt my film craft to the digital craft. And so the technology has changed, but it's changed for the better. Allegedly, it's made it a lot easier. I mean, the autofocus, the auto exposure, a lot of the cameras are way, they're way smarter. So I think what's changed is a civilian can buy a nice camera on a Monday and they can be shooting a wedding on a Saturday, whereas when I started, the learning curve was much longer. The learning curve was months, maybe even years. Now the learning curve could be weeks. You could watch 10 YouTube videos with your new camera, and allegedly you would be armed and ready to shoot a wedding. So I think the learning curve has gotten way shorter on the craft.
So we've talked a little bit about the tools and sort of the knowledge. What is is there something that you see regularly that you think could be done better or differently on a wedding day? Is there something that you generally do first looks just really work out, or is it a really case-by-case basis? What do you think is something that brides and grooms can do to make sure that they have a wedding day that works and is fun for them?
I would say I've been to well-run weddings, I've been to poorly run weddings. And the poorly run weddings, the client is frustrated, the vendors are frustrated, the venue's frustrated, things are running late, or they're running behind, or they're goofy, or they've gone off track. So I would say planning, inviting someone to help you on your wedding weekend, whether it's a paid professional or whether it's a friend, someone that's going to help you run your schedule, someone that's going to help you run your vendors, someone that's going to do the communication between you and the venue and the vendors, that's going to relieve the tension of the client. So someone else is running your day for you, and sitting down with your professionals and setting up your schedule for the day and not trying to be over ambitious, I believe is the key for success, in terms of a client getting what they want from their wedding photographer. Also, our job is based on the opportunities that we have to create great images. So if you give me an opportunity to create great images at your getting ready venue, at your church, out in the city, out at the lakefront, and then back at the reception, if you give us opportunities, in other words, well-run schedule, good lighting, plenty of time to work, good communication, then that's going to result in success.
The context of this conversation that we're having is kind of based around Father's Day. And so what does it feel like to be able to work with your son, to work in a family business?
Well, it feels great. I mean, it feels great to have a lifelong relationship with my now business partner, and a familial relationship in which we're affectionate. There was always loved mentoring, always loved teaching moments, and I wasn't the recipient of any of that around with my father, and that's not why I have chosen to have you as my partner. It's just that it's brilliant to be able to work with your son, and to work with your best friend and your son, and to do fun projects, solve problems for clients, but then also just solve problems together, solve creative problems together. It's really exciting. And the biggest challenge is realizing, like, you might be smarter than me in some places, you know what I mean? Which is it's just a blow. It's just like, oh, okay, now I don't have all the answers anymore, you know what I mean? It's like, now some of the answers come from you, and you know what I mean? So, it's not a challenge. Just putting your ego aside and saying, oh, well, now the next generation is actually teaching me rather than I'm teaching them. So, that's an interesting reversal that happens at this juncture in my life, you know what I mean? Is that now I'm the student and you're the teacher, you know what I mean? At least half the time.
The funniest thing is in my life is like hearing a lesson from you or Mike or learning something out in the field, working on it, and then forgetting that and then having it be relevant again in a new context later on. And you're like, oh, okay. Like the whole idea of like, we're just looking for good light. Like you learn that, it's like a phrase that you hear when you're like a new photographer. But then your definition of like what good light is changes throughout your whole career. And so like, but then you realize that you're attracted to that sense of light that like when, like I have a romantic feeling about how I learned from being with you. And so like that informs the way that I look at my photographs. You know what I mean? It's very much like, well, the quality of light that I learned was good light was because I learned from your taste. And so I think that I still have some of that like in my DNA as a photographer. It's really cool to think about how you would work in that scenario and how I would work and how that would be aligned or maybe how that would be different. But like, it's so lovely to have that frame of reference from having a mentor in you.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And now the shoe is on the other foot. You're my mentor in terms of, capturing motion. You're my mentor on technical stuff. You're my mentor on bringing me new information and new insights, which is really fun to have, my own son, my own family member bringing the new stuff to me, bringing creativity to me, bringing creative ideas. And for us to together work on creative things together, it's like magic. It's really like magic, it's really like magic when you're in a groove and you're churning and burning, and whether it's shooting a wedding or whether it's shooting a different type of assignment, the goal is the same. Make the best photographs you can. Compare your photographs. I learn from your photographs. You learn from mine. We each consciously and subconsciously absorb each other's magical skills and employ them. So that's actually the biggest reward, I would say.
Yeah. There are so many exciting projects that we've gotten to work on in our career and also in our life, and so many fun trips that we've got to go on. Now you have a very fun project that's closer to home than some of the trips that we've gone on. Do you want to talk any bit about that?
Well, I am interested in closing my food loop and mostly my food loop and my homestead loop operations. So, yeah, that project's exciting. We bought a piece of property. We're going to grow our own food on it. We're going to raise our own chickens on it. We're going to build it out and create an experience for people to come to the farm and pick fresh flowers and eat some organic food. People could even stay on the farm at the farmhouse. So developing that product has been really fun, something that's going to sustain our family for a while, or it's going to at least pay for itself as we decide to create whatever we want to create over there, which is, really we're starting with a clean slate, a piece of property in Southwest Michigan that's beautiful, and now we can build whatever we want on it. We can add whatever we want. We can add whatever animals we want. We can grow whatever we want. We can learn all about closing your own food loop and learning how to produce your own food.
I think that that's really cool. I mean, and I know that environmental impact has always been one of the things that you've been really passionate about. And so to watch you get this interesting piece of property and start to put in hopes and dreams and thoughts and is really exciting. And the idea of being able to not only have it affect our family, but also like being able to invite other people into that experience, I think is a really, that it is so exciting to me. And here's the other thing. You are in a magical agricultural region, right? Like I think about all the berries and all the wine and all of the produce that's grown in that area and regionally. And I think to myself that it's just a really cool thing that you're in this little pocket of glacial lake formed, who knows, that's, you know, it's imbued with nutritious and healthy soil that I think is going to be very interesting to watch you develop.
It's pretty exciting. Every time I take a drive, whether it's on my road or on a new road in Southwest Michigan, I'm just in awe of the landscape. I'm in awe of the generations of farmers that came before me that will help inform, you know, my learning process about how to farm, about how to grow food. You know, we're trying to learn how to grow organic, no-till. We'll see what we adapt. I mean, you are a mentor in the growing thing now, which is really fun. It's fun to learn from you about plants and organics and foods and seeds and the way biology works with the earth, and to be on a place where we have unlimited water, that's pretty exciting to me. That was one of the things that informed my decision to stay in the Midwest, is like, we're on the largest aquifer with the Great Lakes, and whatever's underneath the earth surrounding the Great Lakes, it's the greatest aquifer, I think, in the world.
The idea of being more in touch with natural rhythms and natural, I think, just appeals to the artist in me too. You know what I mean? It's like the idea that everything has a season and you work through cycles of joy and pain and growth and death and all of these different things. It's just like, I feel like it informs to a deeper core what I want to get out of my life, which makes me a better artist, right?
I agree. I mean, and when we can become, as you said, responsible for our own environmental impacts, and we can be responsible for the creation of things, it really informs everything that we do. As you said, it helps you be a better artist. It helps me to be a better artist, a better human, maybe a better parent, a better, you know, partner to Cindy, and a good, responsible animal owner, pet owner, all of that stuff. To be learning at this chapter is really one of the things that keeps driving me, because if I wasn't learning something new every day, I feel like I would be regressing rather than progressing.
Being the constant student is certainly a lesson that you've imparted onto me that I think has made my life overall better. And so I don't know that I have a better way that we can end this podcast than on that little hopeful note of what have you. Is there any final thoughts that you have?
No, I'm excited. We're going to be working on this and talking about it, you know, for the next few years together, and we're going to be informing our clients and learning more about our clients and learning more about our other partners, and to do it in this way, in a creative way like this, is really exciting.
Yeah, it's the start of a new vibe, a new chapter. Recording photos and videos has always been a very big part of what we do. I'm so excited to learn from this process, learn from each other still more, learn from our industry partners and interesting people that we meet in the wedding space and in the event space, really. So with all that, thanks, Ted.
Who do we get to talk to next?
That's I think you and Mike are going to be the next ones. I think you guys are
Oh.
going to interview each other.
Fun. That'll
Yeah.
be fun.
I think it'll be cool.
All right.
In any event, thanks. I love you.
Love you too.